rise today in strong opposition to the nomination of Joe Goffman to lead the Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Air and Radiation. Mr. Goffman has been the Biden administration's leading political appointee in that office now for over 3 years without Senate confirmation. He also spent all 8 years of the Obama administration in the same EPA office. Rarely do we have such a robust record to draw on in evaluating a nominee. And I say this with great disappointment, but rarely is the record so damaging. Madam President, Mr. Goffman's actions, marked by federal overreach and job-killing regulations, has been a disaster for our country. Under President Obama, Mr. Goffman was a chief architect of the Clean Power Plan. This rule aimed to close down coal and gas-fired power plants, especially those in my own home state of West Virginia. But it was a direct shot at American energy production. In 2022, the Supreme Court confirmed what we all knew. The original Clean Power Plan was illegal. Unfortunately, before this rejection, mines were shuttered, workers were laid off, and communities were left behind. And yet, this has not fazed Mr. Goffman. Recently, in his current position at the EPA, Mr. Goffman has proposed the second iteration of the Clean Power Plan. Many of us have warned a lot about the lawlessness and danger of this regulatory plan, and I appreciate my colleagues on both sides of the aisle speaking truth to the EPA in recent letters about what this would do to our economy and to our energy sector. But you don't have to take it from us. Here's what our nation's grid operators, which are nonpartisan groups responsible for ensuring our electric system is reliable and affordable. This is what they said about the Clean Power Plan 2.0. Quote, without firm proof of the commercial and operational viabilities of these technologies, proceeding with these requirements could place the reliability of the electric grid in jeopardy. In short, hope is not a strategy, end quote. Despite these concerns, Mr. Goffman is intent on implementing this part of a misguided climate agenda, regardless of what the law says or its disastrous consequences on the reliability of the grid or the affordability of energy. I've also spoken before about the Biden administration's rapid push towards electric vehicles, despite warning signs and lack of a plan to deal with the inevitable increased electricity demand. Compliance with the EPA's current policy would require 2/3 of new cars to be electric by model year 2032. And now California wants to push the auto industry even faster, requiring that all new cars must be electric by 2035. And important to note, since Senator Schumer last filed cloture, Mr. Goffman's office has agreed to formally consider this request by California to ban sales of all new cars with internal combustion engines within the next decade. Well, we saw what happened with our electric vehicles during the cold spell we just had. Meanwhile, automakers have sounded the alarm that Americans simply aren't buying EVs at rates that would match this pace and have scaled back previously announced investments. So the EPA is trying to force Americans to buy expensive electric cars, and they are more expensive, that they can't afford at a rate they do not want. And this is all at Mr. Goffman's direction. Already in 2024, we are seeing the courts working to correct the regulatory confusion created when the EPA Office of Air and Radiation oversteps its legal authorities. As an example, the EPA's so-called good neighbor regulation would remove the authority states have to manage their environmental policy under the Clean Air Act. Initially, Mr. Goffman's rule targeted 23 states, and you're right, one of them was mine. But just in the last week, his office proposed to expand the rule to 5 more states, which now include Arizona, Iowa, Kansas, New Mexico, and Tennessee. This has caused the Supreme Court to step in once again and consider pausing the program while litigation proceeds. We're also expecting Mr. Goffman's office to finalize an unattainable, unnecessary air regulation that would threaten manufacturing jobs and projects across the country. That rule is expected any day now. So to sum it up, from his more than 10 years at the EPA, we know that this is what Joe Goffman stands for, because he has shown us this time and time again. His record is one that consistently kills American jobs, threatens our electric grid, and violates the law. That is why I continue to strongly oppose his nomination today, and I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to do the same. Thank you, and I yield the floor.